This is a story I experienced 10 years ago, a tale of intense hardship and sorrow. I was at the lowest point in my life, but I desperately clawed my way up and sought revenge. That's the kind of story it is. My name is Becky. Back then, 10 years ago, I was still 27 years old. My husband Rob was 2 years older than me, and we met at the same workplace. It was a truly coincidental encounter when I joined the company as a new employee, and he happened to be my instructor. Despite the title of instructor, there was only a 2-year age gap between us, and Rob always had a somewhat boyish vibe about him. So it felt more like having an older brother, and I could interact with him with a sense of familiarity. Perhaps because I approached him in a friendly manner, he would often invite me out for meals. We became a popular duo at work, known for our good relationship as the superior subordinate pair. This kind of relationship lasted for about 2 years until one day. Hey, if we continue to be together, I think life will be enjoyable. Haha. At first, I didn't understand what he meant. Was he suggesting that we continue as friends, maintaining our close relationship? Naively, I thought along those lines. Well, yeah. Let's continue to hang out and go for drinks together, more like friends rather than boss and subordinate. I blurted out those words without thinking, but then my husband's face turned bright red, and he looked at me straight in the eyes. No, that's not what I meant. I was asking if you'd consider dating with marriage in mind. He expressed it clearly and honestly to me. To be honest, at that moment, I didn't have strong romantic feelings toward him. However, I felt happy that he conveyed his intentions so seriously and sincerely. Without hesitation, I accepted his offer of a romantic relationship. From then on, he showered me with love. We decided to keep our relationship a secret until we got married, pretending to be just a labor boss and subordinate at work. I remember surprise on everyone's faces when we announced our marriage. But amidst the blessing from many people, we had a truly happy wedding. Our colleagues at the company, as well as our families and friends, celebrated our marriage with us. The feeling from that time is still vivid in my mind, as if it happened yesterday. Truly believed I was blissfully happy from the depths of my heart. However, I never imagined what would happen after our marriage. At that time, I was completely unaware. Rob became my husband after successfully registering our marriage. Initially, our married life went smoothly. We moved into an apartment near the company together, and since we understood each other's work schedules, we had an understanding that whoever had time would take care of the household chores. As a result, there were no complaints about neglecting household chores, and of course, I never had any reason to be angry with my husband. When we were both busy and didn't have time to cook dinner, we would say, "Should we just order delivery today?" Agreed. And we would order pizza and have a party, even though we had work the next day. Looking back, that may have been the happiest time as a married couple. However, that happiness quickly faded away in an instant. When we reached the 1-year mark of our marriage, it was the first time we had a serious conversation. I had just turned 27 at that time. While working at the company, I noticed my husband talking to his boss. I couldn't hear their conversation, but something seemed off about my husband's demeanor. After a while, he finished talking with his boss and came to my desk. My mom had an accident. He delivered the news to me like that. Your mother? Are you kidding? I asked him, but he remained pale-faced. I quickly sensed that it must be true. I'm going to the hospital. Becky, please come to the hospital after you finish work. Although my husband asked me to do so, my boss kindly allowed me to leave early, so I ended up going to the hospital with my husband. When we arrived at the hospital, my mother-in-law had already regained consciousness. Mom, are you okay? The attending physician explained that there was no immediate life-threatening condition, but my mother-in-law didn't say much, perhaps still in shock from the accident. Then the doctor said something that hit us hard. There is significant damage to the right side of her body. It's possible that she may be paralyzed. My husband was left speechless, standing there in shock. Unable to bear seeing him like that, all I could do was gently rub his back. In the end, my mother-in-law was able to leave the hospital after about a month, but as expected, she was left with paralysis on the right side of her body. Living alone, she became unable to even take care of herself, requiring constant care. Seeing this, my husband couldn't bear it any longer. Becky, I'm worried about my mom, so I want us to live together. Is that okay? He asked me, and honestly, there was no reason to refuse. My mother-in-law had always been kind to me, and despite being my mother-in-law, she was still my mother in a way. Of course, I can't leave your mother alone. I said that, and my husband responded with tears in his eyes. Thank you. But after that, my personal hell began. My husband said to me, I work, so I want you, Becky, to take care of my mom. I loved my job, but I thought it would be better for my mother-in-law if I took care of her instead of relying on someone else. So I ended up becoming her caregiver. However, my mother-in-law's speech drastically decreased, possibly due to the effects of the accident. At times, she would suddenly let out strange cries and create a commotion. Taking care of my mother-in-law turned out to be far more challenging than I had imagined. Given that my mother-in-law was originally tall and I was petite, it wasn't easy to move her around, whether it was putting her in bed or taking her to the bathroom. Initially, my husband helped me on weekends, but after about 6 months, he started saying, I'm tired from work. He would come home and immediately go to sleep. On our days off, he increasingly went out on his own. I found myself fully responsible for taking care of my mother-in-law alone. This one-person operation continued for 6 years. Then I noticed a sudden change in my mother-in-law. She looked at me and said, Oh, who are you? I replied, What are you talking about, mother-in-law? It's me, Becky. Ah, yes, that's right, Becky. She seemed to understand and accept it. Initially, it was just a minor forgetfulness that could be juggled with explanations. But as time went by, my mother-in-law's condition started deteriorating rapidly. Feeling concerned, I consulted my husband, who suggested, If you are worried, why don't you take her to the hospital? I asked him to accompany us because it was challenging for me to handle it alone, but he responded with, "I'm busy with work." Once again, he declined my request. I reluctantly went to the hospital alone to have my mother-in-law's current condition checked. As expected, the result confirmed dementia. It had already progressed considerably. I will prescribe anti-dementia medication, but it doesn't mean she will fully recover. It only slows down the progression. Upon hearing this, I felt despair. According to the doctor's explanation, it means that the progression would slow down, but there would be no improvement from the current state. I returned home in despair and told my husband about what happened today. "Mother-in-law has dementia." "Well, she's getting old, so it can't be helped." That was all my husband said. I was dumbfounded by his casual response. Then, as if nothing happened, he said, "Oh, I'll be on a business trip this weekend. Please take care of everything." He said that and went straight to the bus, then fell asleep. With my mother-in-law having dementia, is that all he had to say? Wasn't there any discussion about placing her in a care facility? My mind was filled with these questions. Is it because he's not involved in caregiving? Is it because I'm just a daughter-in-law? That's when my sense of distrust towards my husband began to grow. From that point on, I continued to consult my husband about my mother-in-law and expressed my desire to consider a care facility. However, my husband simply responded, "Becky can take care of her at home. It would be a waste to send her to a facility." That was his only reply. Even though I was working and offering to pay for my mother-in-law's care facility fees. It's a waste to spend money on something like that. Besides, you quit your job years ago, so there's no way you'll get hired now, he said, sneering. Talking to this person is pointless, I thought. After that, I stopped discussing my mother-in-law with him. 4 years passed, and my mother-in-law passed away. Towards the end, her dementia had progressed completely. She couldn't recognize me or even my husband, and she didn't know if it was day or night. After the funeral, when I returned home, my husband asked me to sit down because he had something to talk about. "What is it?" When I asked, my husband spoke. "Actually, I have a girlfriend and a child, so I want a divorce." My mind went blank. A girlfriend? A child? What is he talking about? Even though I'm devastated by my mother-in-law's death, this joke isn't funny. Hey, stop with the weird jokes at a time like this. It's not funny. As I said that, "It's not a joke. I don't feel any attraction to you as a woman anymore. From now on, I want to live for my girlfriend and son." He said it so clearly. Just by looking at my husband's expression, I could tell he wasn't lying, but I didn't want to accept it. I had dedicated 10 years of my life to taking care of my mother-in-law, and during that time, my husband was cheating and even had a child. Something inside of me snapped, and I couldn't stop laughing. "A child, a girlfriend? How amusing. You were doing that while I was taking care of my mother-in-law," my husband said, looking guilty. But then he began explaining the reason for his infidelity. At first, he felt grateful that I was taking care of him, but as he watched me gradually deteriorate, his feelings of love faded away. He couldn't bear to witness his mother becoming a stranger to herself, and he didn't want to come home anymore. In the midst of all that, he found solace in another woman and developed a relationship with her. He wanted to properly raise the child they had together. After hearing everything, I said, I understand, and packed my belongings, returning to my parents' house. I had lost about 20 pounds during this caregiving life. I hadn't had the luxury to visit my parents due to the business of caregiving, so it had been several years since I last saw them. When my parents saw me, they were shocked, saddened, and deeply angry upon hearing my story. My emotions were completely shattered. You know what? I was cheated on by my husband, and he even had a secret child. It's laughable, isn't it? I laughed while crying. My mother comforted me, rubbing my back, and we cried together. Unforgivable. My father trembled with anger as he said those words. After that, I secluded myself in my old room at my parents' house for a while. However, with the encouragement of my parents, I decided to properly claim compensation through a lawyer and come to the conclusion that it would be best to separate from my husband. The day to meet my husband arrived after about a month apart. I still couldn't eat properly and couldn't go out much, but I was ready to have a proper conversation with him. We had arranged to meet at a cafe to sign the divorce papers. At that moment, for some reason, I found myself thinking this. Hey, can I meet your affair partner and the child one last time? I thought I had only pondered this in my mind, but it seemed the words slipped out. My husband sitting in front of me looked at me with a shocked expression. Well, that's a bit, he said, visibly flustered, so I responded. It's not like I want to punch them or anything. I just want to meet them once and have a final conversation. I looked straight at my husband as I spoke. Although my husband remained undecided until the end, when I offered to reduce the compensation a bit, he immediately agreed to meet. A few days later, we arranged to meet at the apartment where my husband's affair partner lived. It was the four of us, including the child. The child was only 3 years old and an incredibly adorable little boy, despite the complicated circumstances. As soon as she saw me, she seemed uneasy and started the conversation. Before she could continue, I spoke up. Before that, can you listen to me? With that, I began to speak about something I had wanted to talk about for a long time. Of course, it was about my mother-in-law. She had become incapacitated after an accident and developed dementia until she passed away. During that time, I single-handedly took care of her, and in the end, I was exposed to the affair and the hidden child, leading to a forced divorce. I told her about it all. While caring for my mother-in-law, there were times when she showered me with verbal abuse. And after she developed dementia, there were instances when she even physically assaulted me. Of course, I tried to consult my husband about these issues, but he never took them seriously. In fact, when I suggested moving her to a care facility, he flatly refused. I shared all these facts with her. At first, the affair partner listened to my story nervously, but gradually her expression became more serious. Then she confronted my husband. Love, didn't your wife neglect the caregiving responsibilities and make me help out? She said that only her time with you was a source of solace. My husband stammered in response. Well. His face turned pale, clearly shaken. Unable to bear this sight any longer, I asked her, "Do you have both your parents?" "Yes, I do." "Well, be prepared then. Even if your parents were to become dependent and in need of care, that man would never help. Do you understand? He's the kind of person who cheats in a situation like this and even creates a child." I stated it clearly. My husband seemed like he wanted to say something, but he couldn't utter a word. He just opened and closed his mouth, sweating profusely. After finishing telling everything, I left her house. I was able to become a stranger to that man without any issues. Some time later, I received a message from my ex-husband's affair partner. In the end, they didn't remarry and simply separated. Of course, it was a hard decision to part our ways. She ended up taking custody of the child, and my ex-husband was forced to pay child support to her, or so I heard. Well, it's his own fault, though. I still lack the motivation to live on my own, so I'm staying with my parents for now. I started working part-time at a nearby supermarket and slowly contribute some money towards household expenses. I'm also saving money for the day when I'll live on my own. My parents don't pressure me and say, "You can stay at home until we are settled," which gives me a sense of stability. However, even now, I sometimes recall that wedding day. We were so happy, but how did it all come to this? But there's no use dwelling on such thoughts. Although I feel like I wasted 10 years of my life after marrying my ex-husband, I should focus on looking towards a wonderful future. For now, I'm trying to convince myself to think that way, even if it's forced. My life is still ahead of me.